Tonight. This is Mr. James Top.
How's everybody?
I'm going to give you a quick background, I'm going to set up the evening. First thing I'd like to do is thank Bill Gordon for making this possible tonight.
Amen.
Alright, so I'm going to tell a little personal story.
Please.
Okay.
Take your time.
Your time. Alright. So, you know, I was thinking about you coming tonight, and it made me think about graffiti.
Yes.
I don't know why. It was very
My name is synonymous with that.
There you go. So I was thinking about 2002, and at the time, so I was a trend spotter, you know, through the 90s and into 2002. And Amsterdam was really hot around like the turn of the millennium, and so in like 2001, 2002, I went to Amsterdam for work, and I spent a long time, like months, in Amsterdam. And I fell in love with the city. Like I thought there's nothing cooler. There is no place cooler, there can't be, than Amsterdam in that moment in time. So I was trying to learn Dutch. I was like basically trying to become a Dutch citizen. I was just all like, I don't even know about New York anymore. New York is so not cool. And so I was having this funny, I was curious as I was flying back to America. I was sort of sad about the idea that I might be falling out of love with New York because I just like really have a deep love for this place. And so as I got off the plane, I was like, all right, I'm really going to pay attention to what it is that makes New York, New York. And within like an hour or two of walking the streets of New York City again, I was like, Black urban culture. Oh my God! Like it just like, especially coming from Amsterdam, you know, like Northern Europe, whatever. Like I didn't realize what I was missing, and all of a sudden it was clear to me like what the soul of New York has that is like just so deep and so rich, and so. I was just back in love with New York. Like immediately, I'm like, oh my God! I saw no one wearing that in Amsterdam. You know, and the music, like the whole thing, which obviously I was already familiar with, like way deep familiar with hip hop culture, but it just hit me after that trip that was such a part of New York City. So, so it's really cool to have you here tonight because graffiti, hip-hop culture, all of it is such a part of the city, and now a global phenomenon. And so, and you're one of the originals, not the oldest.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to get cleared up. I don't know who's starting that room.
So, you heard it here tonight. This is not the oldest living graffiti writer. You're welcome. And I'm just going to do a quick, like, official bio.
Your time.
Okay.
Not no rush. Ain't like I'd rather be here than anywhere else in the world.
All right, great. Well then, I'm gonna read this. It's really boring when I read, but here we go. Because the information is not boring. So, James Top, better known as the People's Artist. James is a self-taught artist who began his graffiti career as a founding member of the Odd Partners. Top would make history by dominating the IND and BMT subway lines during the mid to late 70s. In recent years, he has toured Europe and many of the southern states in the U.S. painting murals on commission. Today, he works as an art consultant mentor to many area schools, charities, community, and youth-based organizations. For over a decade, James has produced the cable TV show Graffiti NYC. The show features the people, places, and events of graffiti art culture in New York City, and it airs each Sunday at 1:30 a.m. on Channel 67, MNN Network. That's Manhattan only, not Brooklyn?
No, you can catch us on Brooklyn on the Net live stream at www.mnn.org.
Okay, mnn.org.
MNN, two N's.
Yes, okay. His works are already in the prestigious art collection at the Schomburg Center in Harlem. Said James Top, I take great pride in capturing the African-American experience in America on canvas and community murals. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. And like I said, thank you, Skylar, and thank you for having me. Thank you, Bill, and thank all you students, sitting in the seat. I went to a small school in upstate New York called Rockport State. It's right outside of Rochester, New York. I don't know if any of you guys know where that's at or familiar with it, but it was snow there every day. Every day with snow, so but anyway, being a New York City kid, you know, we're not used to so much snow, but after a while, you know, I kind of got used to it. And, you know, my transformation period from New York City to now in this small, snowy town and, you know, upstate New York, where I probably got more people in my project building, you know, than they have in the whole town. So, but one thing I always look forward towards, you know, being a college student is, you know, hearing people come and lecture and give me information. And, you know, I waited and waited and waited for someone that I wanted to hear or didn't quite know but discovered, you know, this person and the information that they give me and changed my life. And every time I get an opportunity to speak at an educational of higher learning such as this one, by the way, and I heard some students, you know, tell me about the major you guys are in, and I just want to say beautiful, change the world, you know, change the world. Sort of like we did in graffiti, you know. At the time we didn't know it, but we changed the world. And graffiti art is an art that was created by kids in a spirit that probably could never be captured with anything else, and especially in art form. When you have young people creating an art form, creating a competition, and creating a spirit that would go on. I mean, there were times when I was younger and I thought that it was really going to be the last year for graffiti art. When you started off, you were so enthusiastic and you had so much energy to go out there and do it, but then there was times you would say to yourself, what the hell am I doing, you know, this for? Because it was not accepted by the mainstream and by society, and was that, where am I going to go from here? Not to go beyond, you know, myself, and because I'm definitely going to get a chance to talk a little bit about me and about the other people that I grew up with, and eventually we call ourselves the art partners. With that, you know, about 12 or 13 years old, and with my friends, and we decided to call ourselves Top. People, Top is not my name I was born with, but it was the name that was eventually given to me by my peers, and we called ourselves Top. And we wanted to be the best graffiti crew ever, and we wanted to take every train lines, and everywhere we would go, we wanted the other people to admire us and respect us because we were the best crew. We had more numbers on the trains than anybody, and like I said, it was a competition between other kids that not only lived where you lived at, but lived in the Bronx and Manhattan, and you wouldn't even know them, but you would see their names on the trains, and that would stimulate us to work harder, write down names on the train, so that they would see that we were the best. And so we would laugh and joke and look at trains and talk about being the best and being the top crew. And I was 13 years old. By the time I was 17 years old, we had accomplished that. We had accomplished conquering every train line in the system of the New York City subway system. And that's the INDs, the BMTs, and the IRT train systems. And we talking about thousands and thousands of train cars. From the time that we was 13 joking about it to the time that we were 17, we were at the top of graffiti. And those guys are not here with me no more. And it was up to me to continue this legacy of being the very best that New York City has to offer. And each and every day that I wake up, that's my goal. To continue what I said that we were going to do when we created this crew at the age of 13. And then at 17, we were the total best, but where do you go from there? that was our dilemma. And the reason those guys are not here is because there was no other outlet for us with this art form, but to get more into what street life was. And, you know, that's a short life. And, you know, I'm still here representing for the TOP crew and those other guys that are not here. And just like you sitting in those seats, I was looking for somebody to help me change my life. And I want to thank you more than you could ever know for me being in front of you today. And I'm ready to go to slideshow. So thank you all. Can you give me a round of applause for you guys? I feel great. I know I got a little emotional, but I feel great.
That's good. I like emotional.
Thank you.
Yes. Do
Yes.
you want to start here?
Sure. Let me start here. You know, first of all, you know, I'm happy to, of course, be African American and have this month dedicated to African American history and culture. If you get a chance, learn a little bit about African American history and culture. There's many contributions that we, you know, gave this country to make the United States what it is today. And as a resident of Harlem and a part of New Harlem, you know, I have my show called, you know, Black Like Me at the Physical Therapy of Harlem on 116th Street between Lenox and Fifth Avenue. You know, growing up, I was deprived of an art education. That's why I learned graffiti art, because that's the only art form I could learn, because in the 70s there was a physical crisis and the first thing they cut were all the art programs. So I was a casualty of that. I could have got into other things that, you know, you can imagine where I could have got into gangs or drugs and all that other stuff. But I got involved in graffiti art, and I'm glad today I made that choice. But growing up and walking around what I did in East New York, I grew up in the Louis H. Pink houses, which is way out the way. There's no train station. You got to walk 10 blocks to get to the train station. And I grew up like in a project belt. My projects has got 22 buildings and like 10 stories high, and each apartment is actually filled up, and there were no outlets for us at all. Only one thing they had was one basketball for about 500 people. And they would throw this basketball out and we would fight to see who's going to play. And believe me, they'd get you out of there quick. If you wasn't good, you played one game. That's if you get a chance to play. So, you know, that's the way it was. And, you know, I would walk around looking for art resources because I was interested in art. And there were none. There was no art at all. There were no murals. There was nothing. But there's another projects across the street and another projects down the block. So my way of giving back, you know, now is that I didn't want another kid to be black like me. I wanted another kid to get an opportunity, if he was black, to see an artist that he could relate to in his community and see my work and maybe be inspired, or at least say, you know what, I did see James Top in the neighborhood. It wasn't in no gallery. It wasn't downtown. It was right in my community, and I got a chance to see his artwork and learn a little bit about him. And, you know, just trying to give back where I can, and, you know, being a part of, you know, Harlem, and the tradition of Harlem and culture and stuff. It's an honor to be an artist in Harlem. I really, really enjoy it. And I'm from Brooklyn, but sort of like a Harlemite now. You know, I don't know what took me so long to get to Harlem. So, you know, my show is running to February the 28th. If you get a chance, you're up in Harlem, please check it out. The gallery is open from 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Black Like Me, James Top, one-man show. Thank you very much. Right. Okay, I don't know, we want to dim the lights, or we can't dim the lights, I don't know. You can? Yeah, you probably can see the photos a lot better. Guess we ain't got to turn them off, but
Yeah, they're up.
okay, cool. Got the cameraman, you can see in the back. Great, yeah, well, I tell you, I've been in a lot of hot places lately, but listen, they got good heat up in here. If you ain't got heat in your house, this is the place to be. Yeah, I know, that was a little funny. Maybe I should think about career change, huh? Okay, I'm just joking. Get into graffiti art. For those that know, they didn't get an opportunity to check out the phenomenon while we had it on the New York City subway trains. And that's basically what the beginning of this art form, was all about, especially on the trains, because, we could have our competition, on the trains, and we could see who was who. They had insides of the trains. So, you write your name inside, and there'd be competition inside, definitely be competition on the outsides, there'd be competitions in the neighborhoods, there'd be competitions in the different project buildings, staircases, even on the buses, a whole different thing than it was today. But how New York City got to be the capital of graffiti art was via Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and we talk about the mid-1960s. This guy right here, by the name of Cornbread, was the first graffiti writer, or the first person to be documented as a graffiti writer. Tagger is a newer term because we called ourselves writers. And this word tagger, a tag is the first element of graffiti art. It's just basically a signature. New York City, something that, if you're a New Yorker, you got style, some kind of style. Eventually you get some style. And, yeah, for real. And to get some style with a signature was something really cool. Like, man, that guy's got a nice hand style. You know what I mean? He's got a nice style with his S, and it was to have style. And that was included within the art form, having style. You guys might know it now as swagger. I don't know. You got swagger. I still feel funny saying that word. But anyway, moving on. Cornbread, his name is Darryl McCrae. He was in love. Like we all may be at one point or the other. He was in love. And the way he would express his love was to write his name and his girlfriend's name everywhere. Got him fame. I don't know whether and I got to ask him that the next time I see him, because he is a personal friend of mine. Whatever happened to that girlfriend you had? Yeah, but anyway, so he kept writing the name. Eventually, other people would emulate him too. And Philadelphia actually had, the notoriety of being the graffiti capital of the world. And this guy right here was documented in the papers. He was very, very well known in circles. And he grew up in North Philadelphia also too. And other people, like I said, started emulating, what he was doing, because you can get fame in it. And fame was another part of why we wrote graffiti. Fame, self-esteem, because you got to remember, he lived in North Philadelphia, I lived in East New York. What do you do to get self-esteem in those areas when the world is totally ignoring you? And for a long time, that was acceptable for me to not be a part of society, but be a part of our own society, that people see you as someone who is accomplished. And being a top flight graffiti artist was an accomplishment, because when people would get on the trains, they would see your name, they would come back to the neighborhood and they say, yo, I seen your name. It was a big thing, because nobody else was patting you on your shoulder telling you did a good job than anything else. So, we talking about the early 1970s, of course, and the world was totally different than it is today. But this guy right here was the first graffiti writer, and let's go to our next slide and see what we got here. Yeah, it's being Cornbread. That's all right. That's Cornbread again. Let's keep it moving. There goes me and him, and this was last year, by the way, in a show called Outside the Box, and that show was about doing your artwork on recyclable cardboard boxes. great contribution to the world. You know, recycle is a big thing out here today. So, this is New York graffiti. This is the start of New York graffiti. The difference between New York graffiti and Philadelphia graffiti is a simple one. Is that when we started doing it, when it became popular in New York City in the late 1960s, it was to put whatever block, the number of the block you lived on, next to your name. That's what separated New York graffiti and Philadelphia graffiti in the beginning. Some of the first guys to write was Julio 204, and of course Taki 183, who really blew up the scene because he was a foot messenger, and he would be downtown and he would write his name all around downtown, because it was really an uptown phenomenon. We talking about Washington Heights and we talking about Harlem, where people would, you know, write their names, in the Bronx too, by the way, can't leave them out. So, you know, people started, young people started writing their names in this new thing called graffiti. And next slide, please. This was how graffiti looked in the very beginnings, because we're going to go from the top, from the bottom to the top, excuse me. And Spy, 161. You know, his name is Spy, and guess what block he lived on? 161, and you know what Farnham meant, you know. And, hey, man, you know Spy? and turn around, but anyway. That cool if the police are looking for you, right?
I think young people are always curious how anyone found anyone before cell phones.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah, there you go. There you
Go
go.
there,
Yeah,
find it.
yeah, but then you had to figure out was that Manhattan or the Bronx? You know, because it could be in the Bronx, 161. But eventually there was separation. You'll find a way for separation because of style, hand style. You can both have the same name, but you can have a better hand style, or you could be up more. And this is how we separate when you have a class of people writing the same name. Most of the time, you'll have two people writing the same name, but they won't have the same number. You know, and I can give you thousands of examples too, by the way. Let's go to the next slide. Stay High 149, of course, he was an early pioneer of New York City graffiti art, and as you can tell, this is not far from his signature, so it means that the piecing style or the evolution of graffiti art is not actually gone past the stage of the signature. And the thing about graffiti was that New York City also organized it, and it evolved too. And of course, we in the media capital of the world, and probably the most creative place in the world is New York City, because you have so many cultures, you know, in one place, and you know, things are bound to, you know, evolve, you know, in fashion, and things are going to change. Next slide. Again, Stay High and Hondo, very, very close to their actual signatures, and you know, so too in graffiti, you have the crown. Very important, because eventually, when you become the most named or the most seen name, we call yourself a king. It was never a prince. It was always a king. And you know, we kept that crown, because the crown was very important, because you talk about kinging lines. You know, so we were building up our self-esteem. That's the point I was trying to make. We were building up our self-esteem by immediately claiming the first thing you can ever claim, you know, with your graffiti. And you would say, yes, I kinged my projects, or I kinged my neighborhood. These were great accomplishments for someone that needed self-esteem, that lived in, you know, poverty. And you wanted self-esteem, so you would find anything to rock that crown with. And number one was another thing, because you were the first one. Right, one? You know what I'm saying? You were the first one. You know, usually when you pick a two, somebody was ahead of you. Then I had a guy, there was a guy by the name of Lava. He was 1 and 2, so I don't know what. Anyway, we go to the next slide, please. Like I said, it started off with signatures. And basically, this was a handball court in some park. You know, this definitely looks like Uptown. You see the name of Lee, 163rd. So more likely, he lived on 163rd Street in the Bronx. But you have two names here, Barbara, and here's Eva 62. These are some of the first pioneer women graffiti writers. And graffiti is so male dominated because I guess it's not really ladylike to you know, go in places and steal paint or go into train yards or tunnels. Spooky thing. I mean, when you know you think about it, and I don't really have fear of going into train yards. It's something that you have to develop, that you're not scared, because if you were scared to go to the train yard, you wasn't going to become a king. So you had to get over that fear. And for a female, not saying that they can't do it, because obviously these two did, and there were others. Shaman, 62, I guess they had a little crew, 62 crew. But there were quite a lot of other females. Rocky, 170, I got a chance to meet her because actually they were older than me. These tags here are before me because I started in 1973, and these might have been 70, 71. And the prime years for graffiti artists are sort of like the first 4 years, and this is when you have the most energy and the most enthusiasm. After that, you sort of pick a direction and where to go and how far you want to go. I was an extreme case because a lot of other people that wrote with me in the beginning stopped at some point, but I kept going, and I kept going, and I kept going. And you have to be somewhat of an extremist to, like, 40 years later now be speaking in front of students. So it was my destiny, and I'm going through with it. Thank you very much too, by the way. But getting back to Barbara and Eva, they helped in the evolution because they were the first two to actually start going past the signature and making their names look fatter by outlining the signature, which we would call a piece or a masterpiece. So they helped in that way of the evolution, because all these little parts eventually made up this art form, and this art form evolved. And they were super pioneers for their contribution. So, as graffiti artists, especially male-dominated, we like to let women know the contributions that other women have with this art form. Let's go to the next slide. Again, you got kids in a park filled with different tags. Like I said, they check out the crown, and like I said, these things are very important. There's a guy with a nice hand style at the time. His name was Stitch One. He was very prominent on the one line, especially. Him, another guy by the name of Jace. Top Cat was also very prominent because actually he came from Philadelphia and started a style here in New York. They would call a Broadway style. And it's very fancy handwriting. A lot of graffiti at the time, we tried to emulate calligraphy in a way because it was fancy writing. I just wanted to say this, I don't want to break you guys' heart, but this is my second actually lecture here because my first one was with the Society of Scribes. This is a calligraphy organization, and I talked to them about how their art form inspired ours, or it was tried to be emulated by us.
Can I
And
ask a question?
sure.
Where were you exposed to calligraphy? Where were you seeing it?
Well, you know, just books and
Yeah.
in places that we wanted to borrow
Mhm.
fancy styles.
Mhm.
You know, like you wanted to borrow these styles and see if it would help your hand style and they give you more prominence. So you would find ways to try to stand out and show a different style than what was the norm. Here goes these ones again. The guys are checking that stuff out. So here's another guy, 1 and 2.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? So, you know, let me see what else I do see. Pinky 1, Fly 1, Lou 169, Diggy, Cake 2, Blinky, is Even Barbara's Stitch Again. There's another crown, God. And, there's somebody trying to be a little more fancy, throw some script in there. And, you know, Brooklyn style was a little different too. We're going to see some Brooklyn style. Listen, STP 171. So, you know, we are seeing a phenomenon, like I said, all kids. So,
Did you choose your own tag or did someone give you a tag?
both ways. You know, somehow you'll figure out a name to write, and you eventually figure if you want that name or not, or see how much criticism you're going to get with a name, or see if people are going to laugh at your name, sort of thing. So in the beginning, you kind of sit back and, you know, you'll tell people, hey, my name is Blinky. Blinky! You know, so you know, pretty funny, and so now you got to change that name because nobody's taking that name serious. And the way things are now, you see in the beginning they had these long names. You had names like Ultra Cool or Super Pro Soul. And, you know, they really long names in the beginning because you know you're trying to be cool, especially in the 70s. 70s culture was quite different than, you know, other decades. It was a real cool, funky, sort of soulful era. And you know, look at the fashion of the 1970s.
Disco,
Yeah, flamboyant. You know, everything. And you know, we really got it going in 1970s, though it started here in New York City in the late 60s. I had guys tell me they was writing as far back as 1967, yeah, 69, and these are the old timers, by the way. And so they was out there. Let's go to the next slide. Let's see what we got. Two guys, man, cooling out. These like sort of like our hippies. That's LSD-3, and this is FDT 56. And then the thing, and then here the tags on the train. They're sitting on the third rail, right? You know what I'm saying? 500 volts of electricity. Like it ain't nothing, no fear. Like you walk in the park. Yeah, I used to do the same thing. Actually, I used to walk on the third rail, jump on one third rail to the next third rail. It was like, but you have that no fear. If you're going to do this, you can't have fear.
So, with the third rail, I mean, it would turn off and turn on with the train. Like,
Yeah,
how did that work?
you wouldn't know. Sometimes it'd be on, sometimes it'd be off. You wouldn't even know. You know, because simple fact that we did not control it. Sometimes you'll have actually be riding on the train and the train start pulling out. And you're trying to run with it to finish what you were doing. And, you know, so we didn't know what was on and what was off. But one thing we did know, if you touch it, you were going to find out. So there were times that I made a mistake and touched it and it wasn't on. Believe me, scared the living you know what out of me. I mean, you shake it. But, you know, you get over it and you know to be careful. And, you know, that's the whole thing about it. Guys used to run from cops, go under the train, past there. There were times where on a layup, we would come from underneath the train and the third row was like right here. And to write our names on the trains, you know. These two guys are some of the, you know, the early pioneers of, you know, graffiti. 3YB is one of the first crews. We'll get into more crews in a little second. LSD-3, As you guys know, this was like a Arabic
Om.
kind of Om. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I just
yeah.
saw that.
Yeah, see? And this guy and this guy are still alive today. This probably was in like 1974, somewhere at that time. Actually, his name, that name, was the first piece I seen coming into the yard. Scared the living, you know what, out of me, because I didn't think I was going to be able to write big like that. It was very intimidating when you come into something for the first time. It really scared me because I didn't think I could do it. And his name was huge to me. And I would tell him that years later. His name was the first name I ever seen, FDT 56. Let's go to the next slide. So you guys didn't used to have this kind of fun. 80s and 90s babies in here, right? Yeah, this was like New York City, late 60s, early 70s. Man, we hitch buses to go somewhere, you know what I mean? Go through the back door, never paid. It was a time really ran by young people. It really was. Now looking at it, you know, we didn't have any fear because you had to put your feet like over here on a bumper, and then there was things here you had to hold on to underneath it, mostly advertisement or where they put the advertisement at. And you know, you be going down the street, these potholes, and you had to somehow, excuse me, see, land right where you were, like right where you were at before. You know what I mean? So why we did it? It's better off just going to the guy, listen, I ain't got no money for this, could you let me in? And, but, you know, this was our way, and thousands of kids, you know, would do it, man, get around. Not only buses, trucks too. We hit trucks. Go to the next slide. Blade. You know, Blade is the official king of graffiti. He has over 250 whole cars. You know, window down whole cars, like the whole car. And he's one of the names of graffiti's crew is called the Crazy Five. And he's very prominent name. Next slide. Let's play it again. And as you can tell, the evolution of the art form, it's moving on, it's getting fatter, more animated. Got clouds here, you got fire coming out of here. Come on now. You know, from that signature. You see how it's moving. Next slide. Come on, guys. You got some love. No lovers in the house. Yeah, I thought it was nice too. Yeah, and voice of the ghetto. That's what graffiti was. Graffiti was the voice of the inner city, the voice of poverty, the voice of the oppressed. You know, the voice of creativity. Basically, was happening because we wanted change. If you were already part of the status quo, you wouldn't want anything to change. We wanted change. In other words, it was a revolution going on right in front of your eyes. You just didn't know it. But we were trying to change the world. We were speaking out. Expression. This is what artists are about. Expression. There's a need for the oppressed to express themselves because it's a lot of pressure. It's really hard being poor. And, you know, somehow when you got that pressure, it's going to explode. Next slide. Here we go. Expression. Need to express yourself. Need to be somebody. Need to want to be known. This guy's Lava. Lava 1 and 2. This is him right here. So he was taking the tag. There's the AJ 161. See the A and then the J? Cool, right? That's style. Oh, excuse me, swag. Anyway, you know, check out what he's got on. Yeah. He's got a pair of Pro Keds on, little quarter fields. So it's obviously it's the winter time or it's cold. Sure.
I also was struck by, I mean, he's very thin,
Yes.
just his physicality.
Yes.
And I just keep thinking about how physical the art form is.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, can you talk a little bit about some of, I mean, you've sort of alluded to like the third rail and like climbing.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
I mean, I think about that all the time when you see tags and unbelievable.
He's standing on the third rail, by the way. You know, actually his name is Lava. His name is also Straight Man, so you pick that up because it's part of his physical appearance. And, you know, actually he's, you know Lava? Yeah. Okay, yeah. He's still not that, you know, he's still not that big, man. He's gained some weight, but, you know, you see why they call him Straight Man or Lava, I would say. And this IRT car, because I can tell because of the circles on the doors, and then they have two panels, excuse me, two big panels, as opposed to three, which is on the IND, which is an R44 train. So you gotta know all that stuff to be a top-flight graph artist, you know what I mean? Like, actually, there's some of us that know the system better than the people who work for the transit system. And believe it or not, there were guys going in to the train yard trying to move trains. It's crazy. You know, you can see the start of an outline that somebody's trying to start. Here's some style here, some hearts. It's number one again. Number two. And let's see the next slide. Let's see what else is there. Ah, bam, boom. These are young kids. Young kids. This is what separated us from our parents. Because they might have been into jazz, and I'm going, I hated jazz. I like it now that I've gotten older. But, yeah, you know, to calm you down. But, this is what separated us from them, because they didn't understand why we were doing it. You know, why are you guys doing this? Like, I don't understand why my pants is down here, I can't explain it, but they couldn't explain why we were doing this, and we couldn't explain to them why we liked it so much. It got to a point where you couldn't explain it. Why are you doing it? Because I just want to do it. You know, that was the rebellious part of us graffiti writers. You know, we couldn't explain it, but we loved it. Next slide, please.
What kind of music were you listening to?
Huh?
I know, like, movies like Wild Styles,
Yes.
some of them sort of propose that graffiti is like one of the elements of hip-hop culture.
Yeah.
But that there are also people who say, like, the original graffiti writers were not listening to hip-hop music. They were listening to whatever the music of the day was. And so, like what was the music
Excellent question,
situation?
man. Excellent question. And you're 100% right. Because hip-hop music did not exist in 1972. You know, it was either rock and roll, soul, R&B, disco didn't even exist then. So whatever music you like, that's what music that was in your head, and that's what influenced you. The reason why graffiti art is connected with hip-hop, or eventually became a part of hip-hop, I want you guys to write this down. Okay, it was easier to market and sell as a culture. Hip-hop, breakdancing, MCing, rapping, beatbox, all these newer art forms were combined and easier for Madison Avenue to sell. You couldn't make any money with them separately. So you put them all together and you sell it as hip hop, now we got something to sell and we have a target audience. Anybody else? I thought you raised your hand, but you was just doing this. Okay, next slide. Here's guys in the train yards. You know, a lot of white boys too. This was on blacks in Puerto Rican. A lot of white guys, you know, contributed to the art form. But what I would say about difference that with white people living in separate neighborhoods, you didn't live in one of our neighborhoods, because there were also a lot of white people living in Harlem and Washington Heights too, was that when you would go to some of the other neighborhoods like Forest Hills, you wouldn't see graffiti. You'd only see graffiti in neighborhoods like East New York and the South Bronx. And before, the simple fact is that we were practicing. They were not allowed them to practice this in those neighborhoods, because once they start seeing stuff like that going, bringing down property values, you know, and any of the kids that started doing it, what is wrong with you? You're going to the South Bronx and you're, you know, hanging with those people and you're doing this graffiti thing. It's hard to explain, you know what I mean? It was like actually putting yourself in danger, because it was very dangerous. And there were gangs in the early beginnings of graffiti. It was gangs. And a lot of the gang members used to write graffiti. And if you start going over their stuff, now they're after you. And I believe these gangs were vicious, violent gangs in the early days of, you know, graffiti. New York as a culture had a lot of gangs. You know, we talking about the early 70s now. Went all the way up to about 1975, 76. So, I mean, 5 years of running from gangs. 5 years of going places that you could not go. And it was crazy. It was crazy. Where I grew up at, I had the protection of the gangs in my neighborhood, which were the Tomahawks. You know, eventually I meet a lot of those guys, and they were like me. And you know, somebody said I did something, they catch my back. And I guess it'd be the same thing in the South Bronx or you know, up in Washington Heights too, because I hear some of the old timers, you know, talk about it the same way. You were attached to a gang somehow. I mean, that's what New York City was about at those times. You want to say something? Okay, we're going to go to the next slide. This is phase 2. He was one of the early innovators of graffiti art. You know, a lot of people call him also too father graffiti art, especially when it came down to style. He was very innovative with styles and changing styles and inventing styles. And you know, you see this style here, it looks a lot different than some of the other styles that we've been looking at, because that's a Brooklyn style. You can tell the difference between a Brooklyn cat and a uptown Manhattan cat with a Broadway style. Queens ain't have no style. Queens. Staten Island didn't even count. But they had a subway line through there. But, yeah, they was riding on those trains, but it wasn't a part of the whole system. You see, this was a system thing, and you be attached from the system. It was like you really didn't count. You know. Let's go to the next slide. All right. And we're going to get back to me, because this is me right here, G2. This was the name that represented East New York, which is one of the craziest places in the world to live at. 75th Precinct had the highest murder rate in New York City throughout the 70s. And we're talking about the territories is much bigger than the South Bronx and had twice as many abandoned buildings as the South Bronx. How I made it out there, I don't know. Yeah, I went there last year, and I wrote my name in cement in 1973. You know it's still there?
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I said. Since 73.
So who was G1?
Actually, there were other G's. I seen another guy, my friend, so-called friend. This is why I say you got to pick your name wisely. And a real name that means something to you, and you could defend it. Great question, by the way. That he goes and takes me on a train ride. We go into this place, and in this yard, there's another guy who wrote G. Thank you, man, for bursting my bubble. Okay, I didn't, you know. So he wrote G too. But what separated you was not only your number, but what people remembered. Like there are other guys that wrote James before me. But once you mention the name James, everyone may think of me. Because my legacy and my history of the name, I now own it. And graffiti is also about owning too. Actually, Coach 2 brother writes G. And I feel that he wrote in his era, and people might know him, and I'm G from the 70s and Party Hard Partners, and I felt that, you know, I did a pretty good job with my name too. Now you might know G, the other G, right? You didn't know me, right?
G2, yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, G2 is known, but the point that I was trying to make is that eventually you write a name so that if anybody else had the name, you forget it. Now, they're getting back to this name thing. There's a guy named So. Like about 4 different So's, about 5 different Sens, S-E-N, S-O-E. And you don't know which guy wrote what. You know, and other guys are taking credit for this guy's work because he got the same name. Eventually he's lying about, you know, things like that. So eventually, what's going to separate you is your number and your style. Okay? Yeah, this is my name. Actually, I haven't got my middle name here, but it's not a clear shot. Here goes the T-O-P, and there's the G2 tag. Let's go to the next slide. It's another G. Of course, somebody got jealous. Anyway, you know, just want to show you about, you know, what's going on there. Graffiti are mad jealous. So these guys, man, just crushed me out for that. Wasn't man enough to leave his name. Anyway, you know, just to go back and talk about our contribution to graffiti art, it was that we invented this style of graffiti called the throw-up. The throw-up is basically a two-color piece. You have the inside and then you have the outside. And it's very close. Let's go to the next slide. It's, okay, that's a G top to bottom. That's the whole train. Okay, next slide. This would be a block style, but this would be more like a throw-up style. And it's very close to your signature because you do it in speed and you do it efficiently so that you don't use a lot of paint. And the way, and that's why we mastered it, was because we didn't have a lot of paint. There was not a place to get paint at in East New York. And then when we would go to other places where white people were at, there was a lot of paint and you could easily get it, or I would say white boys was getting it. When I walked into a spot, believe me, I had to escort everywhere I went. So it wasn't easy for me to go to other places to get paint because I stood out. But the point I'm making about the throw up.
Wait, escort means somebody was watching you so you couldn't
Yes,
steal it?
yeah, through the store, you know, like, yeah, you coming from Harlem or Brooklyn, wherever you coming from, you're not stealing nothing here. And, you know, we do all kind of creative things to get paint. Didn't see it as really stealing, but I'm dead serious. I know it sounds funny. But when you are, you know, 13, 14, and you're not actually going in there to steal something for profit, but to steal something for your creativity is totally different. I never thought about, I'm stealing this because I'm going to get me some money to do this with. Or I'm stealing this because I'm hungry. And we were stealing it in order to be creative, to write our names on a train. So you had to do 3 things illegal. And this what makes graffiti artists so bad, and all the girls like us, you know that. Because, especially back, and all the graffiti artists were tough back in the days. You had to first steal your paint, then somehow you had to break into the yard. That's a whole lot of, you know, criminality there. You know, and the point I'm trying to, so we were really like rebels and, you know, really, as I would say, you know, doing a lot of things that were considered illegal, you know, and you had to do it frequently because somebody was going to go over your name or they were going to clean your name. So you constantly fighting to survive, whether it's from your peers or whether it's from authority. that you had to continue and maintain this, because when you didn't, you're gonna take that crown from you. Then you go right back down to being nobody again. And you gotta figure out else what you're gonna do. You're gonna get into another game, right? You gotta get into something else. You gotta start back from the beginning, all over again, and start paying dues all over again. Let's go to the next slide. All right. That's classic me. Here's the throw up, the J, the double E. And if you look closely, I got a cleft on my chin. And when I was younger, it was more prominent than it is now because, I got like a beard now. And so when I shave it, you don't see it as good as it was back then. But, in my early shots of me doing you can tell. I got a cleft chin. I used to get a lot of girlfriends with that, but they don't see it anymore. But that's what, identifiable, with myself. I had a cleft chin, and, this was the actual start of me kind of expressing myself, because, like I said, there was no art in my community. And the only art I would find, and I would go into a store called Times Square Stores. And in Times Square Stores, they had this like head shop kind of thing, where not only you could buy pipes to smoke marijuana out of, and they had psychedelic lights, and they had these psychedelic posters. And one of the more popular posters was of a guy with a big afro, and a lot of times he would have a leopard. I thought it was so cool. Got his afro and a big leopard. And then he'll have one with his girl too, like down there, he'd be like sitting here. He got a big afro. And I said, that guy's so cool. And let me get some paint, and I would take it and I go into the train yard and try to emulate that. And today, that emulation of that guy with that afro is how I express myself. How not only am I still attached to memories of me as a youth and what I tried to emulate, because I had nobody to teach me art. I had to learn all this on my own in the streets. Something that, I didn't know art techniques. I had to find out and practice these things on my own. There was no books or art books for me or anything like that. Man, why don't you get some art books? Well, I'm going to the store and steal the art books now? Hard enough getting the paint. And so I had to make a choice. Steal the art books or steal the paint. Got the paint. I can get up and I can be somebody. You know what I mean? And so, that's how I started to express myself. And as I got older now and I don't write on trains anymore, I'm doing my things in galleries and stuff, and I'm hanging up paintings. Basically, I express myself whether I'm happy, sad, angry, or whatever is through that same afro. And I'm going to show you examples of it later on. Right, Bill?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to show you what I used to do back in the days. And this is 1976, by the way. So, I had to have good camp control. You see the drips. Shake was doing this thing, right?
How long would it take to do a piece like this?
That right there, is a little more than actual throw up, because the regular throw up would just take me less than, filling it in like about 2 minutes. 2 minutes and a half, because we had to be fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm very fast with a spray paint can, and especially when you're in the yard, and especially if the yard was hot. So I know you heard that before. Yard's hot, meaning that, the police is in there or they're outside of there. It's always like a cat and mouse game. The reason they have the vandal squad and the tactics they use now is because they created a vandal squad especially for us at one point. They always had a way to try to, as I would say, catch us. They would go to places that we would frequent, or they would speak to informants, or they would actually pay guys to infiltrate, to find out where we at, where we going, how we going there. And there was another reason why, that stuff was happening, that we started switching up lines. Because we'd be on the J line one day, the next day, we over at the 2s and the 3s. So we constantly had to switch it up. And then when Mickey and Hurst got busted, they had to switch up their names. So then we had to go to complete other lines again. So we constantly kept it moving. Where these guys are going to be, you wouldn't know. Because we would just, keep it moving. Let's see what the next slide has to offer us. This is Hurst. He also wrote OI. One of the original guys that started out with me, talking about the top crew. And he's got flames in his name. And flames were always so cool back in the day. So do flames. Let's go to the next slide. Hurst top and corpse. You know what I'm saying? Big time there, dude. That was on IRTs. Nice big silver whole car. Hurst top and corpse. Very intimidating when you're in another crew and you see a whole car top and corpse. You know what I'm saying? Coming through. There's I would say I've been campaigning for a couple of years, and that is about trying to get the photographs that they took to clean the trains, because this was under a government program to pay them to clean the trains, but also when they cleaned the trains, they also had to take photographs of the trains. And a lot of times we didn't even get a chance to see the trains that we paid them, because a lot of times they didn't come into service. So you'd be waiting for your car that you just painted, last night to come through, and it would never come through. And you would sit on that bench for a week to see if the car came through or whatever, and it would never come through. That's because they would take it and then clean it before it comes back in service. So, we're talking about hundreds and thousands of cars that they would clean during this period. New York City does not acknowledge graffiti art. And so you won't see it in any of their propaganda, any of their, nothing. But we know eventually it's going to be a multi-million-dollar seller for them to now bust out some of these photographs and say that, what is that clause when you say, public domain? This is not your property. What are you going to do about that? Clearly that is branded. And we would brand our trains by putting our crew and signature there, our crew brand. That's how we brand. So we were conscious of copyrights back then. What's going to happen when they pull out these photos and start selling them to the general public? It's going to be one hell of a fight in the courts, because we feel that property, intellectual property, is ours. You can't sell it unless you compensate us. Got me? So eventually there's going to be a big fight in the courts on graffiti art on the train, and how the MTA is trying to cash in on what we did back then. Coming soon, mark my words. Let's go to the next slide. It's another Hurst again. Very creative guy, Hurst there. Love those colors, the yellow, orange, and red. He was the guy that convinced me eventually we need to be a crew too. So there was some inside politics there. This guy, if he was a basketball recruiter, man, he would be working for Kentucky. That's how good he was as far as getting people to join his team.
Okay.
Next slide. It's Mickey to top. He was the first president of the crew. Actually, our crew's been going on since 1974. This is our 30th anniversary of the Art Partners, so if y'all mind giving me a round of applause. We are one of the oldest, more established graffiti crews, and he was the first president of our crew. He's got his girlfriend's name in there. We could do that too, hey, come here, sit down with me, and see her name. You see her name in it too. Like, yo, okay. But anyway, it was cool when you would see your name in a piece like that, and Mickey would do that a lot. Let's go to the next slide. These are old coal mine trains, you know what I mean? There's a Herb 99, of course there's Mickey. I mean, that goes back to like 1971. Sure, some of you ain't even seen a train like that, right? You usually go on stations and you be sitting down and you get a blackout in the car. I don't know, anybody remember that? Nobody, just me, huh? Hey, okay, they got fans in it. I guess I am the oldest graffiti writer, right? They have fans in it, like fans, like, you know, you stick your hand up, you lose your hand. Like, they had fans there, wicker seats. Those are coal mines, you know, and eventually they went out of the system, I think, in 1977. But they were real popular on the double L line. I think it was the last line to have those coal miners in the system. Let's go to the next train on the screen slide.
Probably a train as well.
Yeah, no, it is a train, by the way. This is probably the most prolific graffiti writer of his time. At one point, he would have claimed to have done 20,000 of these pieces in 1 year. And, you know, it would be compared to Roach Chamberlain's record of 100 points. This guy would have 250 points. Wilt would score 100, he would score 250 points in a game. And that's how many pieces he would have. It was like letting the lion out of the cage and, you know, you have some lamb, you know, in the yard. I mean, this guy was just an animal when it came down to trains. I mean, no one is nowhere in his stratus system. Like, it's just phenomenon. He was a phenomenon, the greatest graffiti phenomenon of all time. And, you know, you look him up, you know. Yes.
What's his name?
N-I-N. Yes, that's right there.
There you go.
There you go. And I mean, he was the man, he was our poster child, and he was the leading ambassador of the throw up. You know, like I said, when we started doing it, when we started taking over lines, guys were just like, yo, these cats is killing it. But also, too, they started biting. So everybody started biting the throw up. Now it is the major weapon used in war with graffiti, because we were not necessarily in war with the MTA, with other writers. We were in war with the MTA for erasing our names. There was not a graffiti writer during our generation that did not also want to be in top. And when we came on your line, if you was the king, you would want to be down with top. Because if not, we was just going to take you out, take you off the line. It was some real, like, you know what I mean? We on the line, what you want to do. Either get down or lay down. Everybody chose to get down. Yep.
Did it ever get like violent or physical?
Never got violent or physical. That was the 80s. The 80s were much different because it was filled with drugs, and especially cocaine. The 70s was a different era altogether. It was more a free spirit kind of togetherness, groovy kind of thing, peace, man, you know what I mean? But the 80s was something completely different. And I'm talking about the 70s right now. I'm not talking about the 80s, because the 80s was violent. One second, excuse me, by the way. Hello? Yeah, what's up? No, but I'm doing a lecture right now and I have to go back. All the students laughing at you, man. You want to say hello to them? Yeah. Tell them I'm in there. See you later. Thank you, guys. Anyway, let's go to the next slide. These are some more ends. And these are his early ends. And these are top to bottom whole cars. I mean, you know how long a train is? And these are top to bottom whole car ends. I mean, he just destroyed the system. Next slide. That is an evolution. Now this time he's dropping them. No more of all that other stuff. Now we're going with the quickness, with the swiftness. You got it. You know what I'm trying to say? You know about him, Cooper, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, craziness. And any guys today compared him, maybe Coke too. You might say the most he got 5,000 drops. This guy had 20,000. 20,000 in the system. He tried to put his name on every train car in the system. We go sometimes when we would paint. Okay, man, I'm ready to go home. All right, man. No. Gee, come with me, man. I got some paint stashed on the R line, man. Come on, me and you do some pieces. All right, fuck, go with you. So we'll go, bust out those pieces. Then, after we finish, I said, okay, I'm ready to go. Hold on, man. I got some more cans stashed at the one line. She said, man, listen, I'm going home, man. 6 o'clock in the morning. But he would go. And he would continue to go. Why he didn't go home, I don't know. But he was totally dedicated to this art form. Totally dedicated, like nobody I know was as fanatical as he was when it came down to actually doing graffiti. Nobody else. He's in a class by himself. He was totally outworking. Totally outworking. There's nobody I ever seen outwork him. And getting back to you guys, study. Don't let nobody outwork you. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of it is your rewards. And his rewards really was to be the king of graffiti, but not only did he take the city one time with the name N, he had another name and he took it all over again. Crazy. Let's go to the next slide. There's a classic N's there. Next slide. This is Dondi. D-O-N-D-I. T-O-P CIA crew. We have the largest body of work on the New York City transit system. There's no, you know what I mean? I mean, me being here is no coincidence. You know, we have the largest body of work between both of the crews. He was our second generation. He was my protege. During 1978, I got out of all this now, and I went to college. That snowy place I was telling you guys about in the beginning. And the other top members would get more into street life. And this guy here held down the crew for us. He was younger. And he learned from us because it was more like an apprentice system for us. And so he studied under me and eventually take over the crew, but also to start another crew, because the only way you could be in top unless you was a king of the line. And back then we had real strict requirements of who we let in top. And of course the newer guys could not get into the crew. So they couldn't run top. I had to fight to get him in top. I mean, really fight. To the day I was getting ready to get on that bus to go to Brockport, I had to fight to get this guy in the crew. Where all the other guys said, okay, since you know you and you vouched for him, go ahead. So he would not only write top, but he was forming his own another crew called CIA, and that stands for Crazy Inside Artists, or Corporation Illustrating Art, or Criminals Invading Again. We have so many different names for CIA crew, but eventually they would be as dominating in the 1980s as we were in the 1970s. Like I said, he learned not only from myself but from the other top members, and then eventually he would become one of the most known graffiti artists of his time, first graffiti artist to go to Europe, one of the first graffiti artists to go to Asia, one of the first graffiti artists to do a lot of things. He also had done all the work in Wild Style. He also appears in Style Wars. You get a chance to pick up his book, Style Master General, by Andrew Zephyr Whiting and Michael White, who is his brother. Let's go to the next slide, by the way. Here he is again, painting in the yard. He was the first person to take Martha Cooper in the yard. Of course, if you don't know who she is one of the foremost leading trained photographers in the world. She's also co-author of Subway Art by Henry Chalfant, which is considered the Bible of graffiti books, and especially on subway culture. Okay, and this is one of those photos here. And then look at his total focus here, and that's a whole car, by the way. How many cans it takes to do a whole car? It depends on how many colors you want to use. Be unlimited. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So Donnie, top to bottom, whole car. It's called Children of the Grave. He's also from East New York too. From East New York. Look at that hand. You know how big that hand must be.
So is there still Brooklyn style?
No. It's not really considered a Brooklyn style. That would be considered more like a block style, to be honest with you.
So the Brooklyn versus Manhattan kind of differences sort of
no. That had been more in the. They had a war, but it was really the Bronx. It was MPC against a lot of other crews because they had this one guy who would do throw-ups on nice whole cars and burners, and his name's Cap, and you could know a little about him in a documentary called Style Wars by Henry Chalfant and Tony Silva. Style Wars, STYLE WARS. One of the leading films when it comes down to graffiti, and you gotta remember those two, the book Subway Art and two documentations, one called Wild Style and one called Style Wars, was the reason of the explosion of hip hop, and then also going to other countries. These two documentations especially, this was the first time Europeans, Asians, and South Americans, and people all over the world would be exposed to this now hip-hop culture. That's how it was packaged. And Dondi would be the lead artist in all of these, especially the Wild Style by, that would be Charlie Ahern. And Dondi would do all the work within that one there. Also, Lee Quinones would be the lead actor. He was also another graffiti writer in a crew called the Fabulous Five. And but it was the work of Dondi in these documentations that would be the first seen by people all over the world. So he was one of the most significant artists of his time, and one of the first graffiti artists to be involved with the gallery movement. There was three major gallery movements. One was involving the pioneers by a guy named Hugo Martinez. And that was with the pioneers, bringing it to some of the prominent art people around the world, because they considered this art form as a new art form that they could start consuming and selling. And then there was another movement in the 80s that would consist of Dondi, Zephyr, Futura, Lee Crash, Days, and these guys were right off of the Jean-Michel Basquiat and the Keith Herons, who were actually making the money with some of the major art dealers and buyers around the world. And these guys were right next. And I'll get more into that when we talk a little later about Banksy. Let's keep going. It's the real deal. Real deal Holyfield in the hood. Imagine all the kids he inspired with some of these beautiful cars here. Getting up in the morning in the van and seeing this here. This is Children of the Grave Part 2. very colorful, very vivid. These are Baudet characters. Cheech Wizard, you know, Vaughn Baudet, who is the father, and his son is out now, Mark Baudet, and you know, so they sort of like got a family thing, and he was a very great illustrator from the 70s, and we adapted and actually bit a lot of Baudet's characters and throughout graffiti. So there's another name attached to graffiti that was outside of our culture that we embraced and emulated. Let's go to the next slides. So you got Donnie again, but from another viewpoint. That's Children of the Brave 1. Let's go to the next one. Another perspective. Next. Another Dondi. TOP. See Dondi, CIA. That end. Carried mad style. Let's go to the next slide. So early Dondis. So you see like a block style there, more than the other one previously was more of a wild style burner. A wild style is something that the artist used to sort of camouflage in letters and to make it very hard for you to understand as someone looking at it, because not only does he want to hide his letters, but he also wants to confuse you on what the word he is trying to present to you. Next slide. Oh, it's Donkey again. You know, certain places you would go in the city and look at, you know, the trains and see graffiti go by. It would look cool, especially when, you know, your name was on the train. It would really look cool. So I imagine Dondi would see his name go by and he was like, yeah, okay. It would be a feeling you have. It feels so good. Next slide, please. That was Dondi with one of his girlfriends. I don't know if that's Lucy or Marisol. He had a couple, but anyway, you see his jackets and I told him the Cheech Wizard, but it's a regular, you know, b-boy character. Eventually, we started in the '80s. Started creating these characters with b-boy sneakers. The sneakers were big and that sort of thing, and spray paint can, of course. And Dondi, you can read and understand. He got his can. That was on top of his roof, actually, and he would practice on top of his roof. Next slide, please. What's this about here? Okay. Yeah, this is another tag. And then his first name was Nako. And that's what I wanted to just show you. That you see the insides of the trains. There's competition. And I said that CIA stood for Crazy Inside Artists because that's how they got their prominence at first, writing on the insides of the trains. We're going to go to the next slide. This is actually Dondi after he had passed away. For years I was not involved with graffiti, at least not on a level that I'm now in the galleries. I was strictly in the streets. I lived in Bedford-Stuyvesant then, and you know, I just stayed on the streets of Bedford-Stuyvesant. And eventually Dondi passed away in 1998, which, you know, the way I felt that it was just really me and him left, and another guy by the name of Duro. And when he passed away, I felt that the world, the graffiti world, would give him justice. So I figured I would come back and throw him a going away show that nobody couldn't do, I felt, because I felt that all the other attempts of having something for him was way under what he gave to this art form. So I gave him a show in Harlem. And that was in 1998, and since then I did not leave the scene. I've been steadily on the scene, doing shows. I'm the largest producer of graffiti shows in New York City, have been for a long time. I am, you know, also the art director of the New York City Graffiti Hall of Fame, which is our oldest, most prestigious place to paint, graffiti at in New York City is located at the famed 106 in Park. The TV show got that name from our location. And I haven't left graffiti since I had that show for him. And we talking about over 300 shows later, and I'm still doing shows and stuff in graffiti. And it's because of him. Because if he did not pass away, I wouldn't be here today. So like I said, it's part of my destiny that when he passed away, I would come back and dominate the gallery scene, which is the third gallery scene in New York City, because what I did was I replaced the galleries and I put the power back in the hands of the graffiti artists, and we determined where we want to now show our art form. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a gallery. It could be in any other kind of venue that would welcome us to have a show, and people can come in and they could see our artwork. So I started having all these shows in non-traditional places, and that's what's going on today, and that's exactly what's going on. Not saying that galleries aren't doing graffiti shows, but at one point they had the absolute power, and they would eventually scare you because if you get them upset, you can show your work nowhere. So now we can show our works anywhere. You do know that, right? Next slide. Donley Foundation, after he passed away, we formed the Donley Foundation to do a lot of things as far as graffiti is concerned. Most importantly, to protect his legacy, and to give other disadvantaged kids outlets as far as art is concerned. There's a lot of things that the Donley Foundation does do. They have a website called CIAKings.com. It's ran by his brother Michael, who is doing a great job as far as protecting his legacy is concerned. Next slide. Just want to get a chance, man, to show you guys a little bit about graffiti art. This guy's name is Paid. You start off with the outline first. You'll fill in things. You'll colorize it. This would be considered a 3D. It's the colorization of the 3D, the pattern of the 3D. He's working with stripes. And then outside of the 3D, you have what we call a force field. These are called clouds, and everything else is a background. So this would be considered, a full color piece. It wouldn't be considered, it's a burner, but it is not a traditional burner, because a traditional burner has all these things in it, but it's also complemented by a background and characters. Characters is something different, because graffiti art, the focus is on the letters, and I'll get back to that in a second. Let's go to the next slide. This guy by the name of Slave, he wrote on the trains, and this would be considered more of a burner. Not a wild style, but a burner. But there are wild style burners too. And as you can tell, he's got his name, he's got arrows, 3D, force field, background, and characters. So this is what we would consider to be a burner. Next slide. This is the start of it. You would create an outline, and this is an outline, and the outline is 3D, by the way. This would be considered a 3D. You have nothing else, and this is how we start. This is how everything starts. It starts with a pencil and an eraser, and an outline. In the outline, you go to the 3D. From the 3D, we can do whatever else we want to do, whatever background, whatever characters, but this is how it starts. Next slide. Get to Europe. And we already talked about how graffiti art and hip-hop culture got to Europe by the use of some of the early documentations of this hip-hop culture put together and then presented to the world. This is in Europe. This is Pro 167, who's one of the big-time guys now, right? You up on Pro?
No.
Oh, sick. Crazy.
Mode.
Well, Mode, he's not as, Pro is younger than these guys, or on the scene now. Mode was like about 5 years ago, right? small, prominent thing, but he is nice. I've heard him mold too. Next slide, please. You can tell they started with the outline, and this is a Pro 167. Remember how it started off with the tags and signatures? Huh? I know it's been a long voyage to get here, but look at this. Absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it started from the cornbread tag. Let me see if he's got his girl's name in it. Might be. Might be a girl. But anyway, his style is very futuristic. P-R-O. See it? Who sees it? See it, right? Crazy, right? Next slide, please. Just wanted to give you a little glimpse of his outline and his colorization process. Greatly influenced by comic books, you can tell, right, Cooper? You know, it's one of those superhero characters, and he's got his name like the spaceship. I mean, like that, whatever. I don't know, it's not a car, but what would you call that? Like somebody help me out. Huh? There you go, see? All right, next slide, please. Outline. Here's straight that over here. Just to show you the power of that pencil in the creative process. I don't think we would be here if it wasn't for those early pioneers like, phase 2 in the blades, in the dondies, because you had to have other things proceed and have an imagination, a creative imagination before we can get to futuristic stuff like this. Next slide. It's wonderful. Crazy. Right? Next slide. It's easier to read right here. F-A-S-E. What that? I see crown? Huh? Still we left the crown? No, we ain't leave that crown. We did not leave that crown. You know, that's that same crown, right? Next slide. Throwing them again. Getting sick. This is Europe. They've done so much to advance this culture. Technology's played a great role. Of course, we're looking at colors we never had when I went to the train yard, or designer colors. The spray can nozzle, their innovation of different spray cap nozzles from ultra skinny to ultra fat. We never had that. We only had one size. We would use other caps to put on our cans to give us, most of the time, fatter a spray than what we had. But, there were times that I went in the yard with just all-star caps. Nothing to make my paint come out larger. Definitely didn't have anything to make what I was doing skinnier. And definitely did not have these colors. Look at these different blues. You've got like a baby blue, a royal blue, and a dark blue. We didn't have these designer colors. And Europe, the advancement of Europe and the acceptability of graffiti art in Europe is something totally that we here in the United States has never had. Say 78 and do a lecture or talk about graffiti art back then. It would be impossible. It still is hard because a lot of people are very conservative and they do not still feel that this is an art form. And so it's been a hard road, just to get here. But see, in Europe, they have long history, hundreds of years, working with artists. They know how to treat artists in Europe, much different culture. When I went there a couple years ago, could not believe how not only did they treat myself, but the other artists too. Actually, I was there in Denmark where we were stationed at. I was in the same suite as Beckham. I had no Beckham money, but I slept in the same bed. So, just show you how much appreciation they have for, this art form and artists. So, in a lot of places you would go, they'll let the artists just paint. They have big, painting festivals in Europe, and just phenomenon, how they, treat the artists there, totally support artists, and in the United States is complete opposite. Let's go to the next slide.
Can I just add one question?
Sure.
About that one?
Sure, you wanna go back?
And like about protocols and rules within the space, like I look at something like this, one looks really big and really intricate.
Yes.
I assume it probably would take a long time, and it looks like it could have been done using some templates or something like that to make sure that all the lines are straight. Are there like rules about you can't use a template if somebody sees you like that's totally against the game? Like are there certain things that everybody abides by?
Yeah, the early rules were that you can't paint or take tags on a house, private, residential cars and things of that nature. Throw-ups go over tags. Burners go over throw-ups. We had rules. We always had rules in which we would abide by. But sometimes when it comes down to creativity, there are no rules, because you as an artist, you express yourself the way you want to express yourself. You see, and that's why I'm not here advocating anybody do graffiti on property that's not yours. I got famous by painting trains, but I ain't gonna be here trying to tell you how to do your thing. You do your art the way you want to do your art, but just know there's always consequences for a lot of actions. You know what I'm trying to say? And then there's certain karma that, you know what I mean? Like, you do this guy wrong, and you're gonna get wrong done to you. And that's just life in general. When you're doing this, you know that there's consequences. There was the reason why people are not painting on the trains today isn't because they got these super high-tech trains that when you spray paint on them, the paint just drops down and you can't paint on them. The reason why there's no graffiti on trains today is because what the government did was they upped the criminal, penal, I would say consequences of it. At first it was a misdemeanor, now it's a felony. That means now you're going to be in jail with real criminals. You know what I'm saying? You would consider yourself an artist, and you rode on a train, but then now you're in there with murderers and robbers and all kind of people that you don't need to be in there with. So that's why we stopped painting on the trains, and that ended sort of pretty much in like 87, 88. Most sane people stopped painting on trains, and they started now using other vehicles such as freights. There's a large freight movement in New York, especially, in America, especially the Midwest and in the South. So that's another way people went. A lot of people went to the streets. A lot of people went to rooftops. There's always been another outlet. Whenever they put a roadblock here, we found another way to get around it. And of course, for people like myself, who I've been arrested before for graffiti art, and it makes no sense for me to write on the streets anymore, because I can do my thing in the gallery, or I can do my thing a million other ways and decide to get locked up for this. But I learned that the hard way too. I don't expect this generation to do the things that I did because it's played out. New generations, they're doing different things. But my thing is with teaching this art form is to use this art form as a vehicle in your art career, and know how to do graffiti art to enhance your art presentations to consumers that want to buy your product or want to buy the product. We are passing this art form along to other generations because in educational settings, for the simple fact is that this is how it's going to survive, which gets us back, just to end off something, he's doing a lot of things that goes against a lot of what we would do with graffiti. Like he got probably 3Ds going all different kind of ways. And when traditionally, if you're gonna go 4 ways, north, south, east, and west, he's probably going every other way too. But you see a large comic influence within his work too. Something that I don't think a lot of American artists chose to use too. Him and his crew, they're doing super comic book stuff. And that's how they becoming big out there. Nobody in America thought of this. It could only maybe happen in Europe because of the support that they have from the government, and also, I would say, just being European, in the position they have of working with artists. And which goes to the next slide, which is one that of the famous Banksy himself, who is probably the greatest artist of our time. He used a lot of the graffiti techniques from America, but they kind of flipped it a little bit because he's also using stencils too. You see elements of past history. He's trying to provoke you. He's trying to make you think, stencils, something that was an early 1980s and 90s movement here in New York City, and he's using it. How much skill does he have as an artist? He's using stencil. He's not even an artist, right? But he's expressing himself, and he's making you think. And he's been successful on a lot of levels, and you gotta even think that presentation there cost $1 million. Got people there that are gonna buy that for $1 million, if not more. $1 million. Let's go to the next slide. Let's see what we got. This is when he came to New York City. The way graffiti artists in New York City feels that, really he ain't got no style, no swag, excuse me. He's got nothing on us, doesn't have no letters. That is the separation between street art and graffiti art. Is that graffiti art, not only is there history, but there's emphasis on the letters. The art of linking letters, graffiti art, focuses the letters. There's a history behind it. It's got a crew insignia also too. Street art, there's a lot of random images. There's no protocol people actually even following. But what's in common with all these different art forms, not only do I remember people in social need calling graffiti art street art, and it's not a real art form, is that now they're not calling graffiti art street art. They're calling it graffiti art, and they're calling this high-priced stuff street art. And it's more acceptable as an art form, and for people to now paint murals all over the city, and it's acceptable as a higher art. Banksy, one of the leaders of the street art movement, came to New York City on what would you call his 30 days here, Bill?
Last fall, right?
He called it a residency.
Yes, there you go, girlfriend. Yes, a residency for 30 days he would do 30 pieces, and his thing was not to do nothing in the gallery, because if he had done something in the gallery, he'd have left New York with a whole lot more than $30 million. He probably left with about 150 million. You know, his stuff is going like hotcakes, you know, over in Europe. But so he comes here, and all the attention is on Banksy. Never seen anything like that before. And this is one of the first things that he did here. And it was sort of the thing where it insulted a lot of people, especially in the Bronx, where he did his first works at. And this is it here. And he got ghetto for life. And a lot of people in the Bronx did so because they felt that they worked hard to get away from that name ghetto. And how can an outsider come here to the Bronx and use that name ghetto? And the traditional Greek graffiti artist says that he should be paying more homage to the forefathers of the Aerosol movement, which is graffiti art.
Did he write Ghetto for Life?
Yes, he did.
He did.
I know.
Well, the kid is supposed to be
another
spray
artist.
painting it as the butler is behind him.
Right.
Yeah.
I get that part, but I thought he was doing that on something that was already written and just put the butler in.
No. He actually did all that too. Another reason why
He in quotes.
in a city where graffiti is sort of like the mecca of the world, and they laughed at his letter style too. You know, you're gonna come here, but you better do it right in New York. You know, and they was on him for that and a lot of other things. But then the thing I would say about him was that he brought attention not only to himself but to the topic, the issue of, you know, how far have we gone as a society and a community that did we not forget 20 years ago it was a ghetto in the South Bronx. And how far have we gone and how much more do we need? Tons of these neighborhoods are being gentrified and stripped from its original cultures. And a lot of people are being squeezed out for people who are more affluent. Was that a good place for him to go and to make such a statement and to bring awareness to a lot of social issues? He's the greatest artist of this lifetime, bigger than Heron or what's got the glasses? The old guy with glasses, soup cans. There you go. You guys know your art history. You know, he can do what he wanted to do, and he can make all the money in the world, to be honest with you. But also, too, I felt that he should have united with the graffiti culture. For one of the things he did, for a simple fact that when the Beatles came here, they went out and worked with all the pioneer rock and roll guys, you know, all the old blues guys, all those guys from Cadillac Records, you know, and these people paid homage to some of the people who pioneered before him, but Banksy did not do that at all. And that's what some of the criticism. And then he's got this gift that he could have done these works in to help a lot of disadvantaged organizations. And, you know what I mean? He could have did so much more with his gift to help poor people. At the time, 5 Points was going through this thing is trying to stay alive, and a Banksy appearance and a Banksy painting there would have totally changed the scales there. Just one appearance. You know? Me personally, I don't think there's a Banksy. For the simple fact is that, and I'm going to let you ask some question, but the simple fact is that you can't be an artist of such prominence and not be documented. They always want you to take pictures. You're always taking pictures. There's always somebody with a phone, camera. You can't get from being documented. As soon as you hit the street, there's cameras on you. And it's more over there in Europe, as far as cameras are concerned, than it's here in the United States. But the point that I'm trying to make is that nobody turned them in for a couple $1,000 yet. Nobody needed any money. Nobody needs money to turn Banksy in to his true identity. How could that be? So I think Banksy is just a symbol for people who already are affluent to create this marketing yeah. Well, how else can a person still stay anonymous and do all these different things, especially in different disciplines of art?
He was
And
given
did not show any mastery of any of them.
TED organization gave him, quote unquote, $100,000 as a TED prize, you know. And
Gave Banksy $100,000.
yeah, but to a bank account. I mean, they did it saying we're not going to tell, but I don't think they know.
Well, I guarantee you, if that they gave money to Banksy, I guarantee you somebody got the money. You know what I'm saying?
No, I'm saying-
And whether it's Banksy or not, I don't think Banksy exists. I think
No, it's a
Banksy
collective.
is more than one person. And you have to sign a letter of non-disclosure. And if you do say that you was Banksy, or at least one of the Banksys, they're gonna prove to you that they're not, and they all in cahoots with each other. So it has to be a group of people, investors in the art world that agreed that they would make this Banksy up. Now, you know, I told this to the Huffington Post, and a lot of other international as well as national, you know, outlets. And every time Banksy made a move, I got about 5 or 6 phone calls and them asking me exactly how do I feel about it. And when I spoke about there was no Banksy, then there were about 3 other stories written on how people felt that, well, this guy's Banksy, and James, you're right. Oh, no, James, you're crazy. I know I'm not crazy. You know, so I think we're kind of getting somewhere, because there would not be an artist in the world that would love to be Banksy and have an opportunity to completely have freedom such as that and to express himself. If you don't give me no more money in the world, I don't care, because now the emphasis will be on my expression. And that's what a true artist is about, his expression. And it says that starving artists, because we have artists with attitudes that they don't care. They care about their expression. How a guy can just pop up and make millions of dollars in galleries and nobody's got a photograph of him, I don't think it's true. The point I was trying to make was from a tag. This art form that has grown to be the most powerful visual force in this world today. In any country, in any city you can go to, you can see graffiti art. And that a kid from East New York can now speak about this art form, you know, to college students. And so much is going on with graffiti art and where it came from. I see a very bright future for this art form. And if anybody's interested in finding out more about graffiti art, if you need information as far as books are concerned, like I said, I'm the art coordinator at 106 and Park Graffiti Hall of Fame. Anything with graffiti art, please feel free to email me at graffitinyctv@gmail.com, and I'll help you as much as I possibly can, or direct you to wherever you feel you need to be as far as graffiti art is concerned. You know, it's my lifestyle. And, you know, basically want to thank you for your time. And I'm here for questions and answers. So thank you all. Thank you. Well, I mean, I've never been so long-winded in my life. But, you know, then again, there's a lot of information when you know, talk about art form and an art form that is so innovative and creative. And, you know, as being design and innovative students here, I had to give you a lot of information. And, you know, I'm sorry. I wish it could have been shorter, but it didn't turn out like that. But, you know, I still want to thank you all anyway. I know everybody want to go, but any questions?
No, I was thinking.
Okay, you can go that. I know you got a question.
I'm always full of questions. I don't want to.
No.
I don't want
I don't want anybody else.
I have like a
Sure.
really weird question.
No, it's not weird.
So, you have a wall.
Yes.
You're a little short guy.
Yep.
How do you climb on people's shoulders? How do you?
Back in the days, you know, yeah, we would do things like that. But
Pull over like.
you got ladders. You'll find anything you can out there to give you some height. I mean, it's a thing where, you know, now you're also being creative too to get the job done. And creativity is the focus of this. To get creative, you also have to be creative too in order to make things happen. And the energy, you know, some people say the high is actually going to get the drugs. Because there's a process you have to go through, which is the high. It's not actually even taking the drugs, because you've done that before. But the high is the mission to get it. You know? Anybody hear that saying before? I'm sure you got a saying.
Don't know anything about it.
Okay, I got you. You know, just saying the journey to succeed is your reward. You know, sort of like thing. You know what I mean? All you went through to get to a certain point is the high. You know, and with, you know, doing art, it's the same thing. It's the process of saying, where am I going to get the money from? How am I going to get this and get that? I need a ladder. Where am I going to get a ladder from? All those things you got to do before you actually even paint on the wall. You got your sketch, but you ain't got to even follow that. You follow your creativity. Anybody? All right, well,
Yeah. Just one quick
Sure.
question. You spoke a lot about like competition.
Yes.
And I know like in the earlier days it was more about kind of like peace,
Yes.
things like that. But from the 80s on, there is a lot of competition in writing, and there
Of course.
is, you know, not that many writers. Like people collaborate, but people also still compete like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think like writing has to have competition, or can it one day be collaborative where we all come together?
Good question, man. And as, you know, somebody who considers themselves one of the ambassadors and leaders of this art form, I would love that. But I do know that because of things like competition, jealousy and envy is everywhere too. Everybody wants to stand out as an individual and keep forgetting about that word team or that word collaboration. Everybody wants to shine and come their way. You know, I've been doing my television show for 16 years. This year marks my 16th year doing my television show. And it's really always about putting the shine on somebody else, you know? And I think now our culture as individuals, we think that we always got to stand out as individuals, not be a part of a team. And, you know, we want to teach team concept, because eventually you want to get your shine. And I think that's why we were so successful in the early days of Top. We were a team. Mickey would figure out where we're going to go. Hirsch, before that, would figure out where we're going to get our paint from. You know what I mean? You know, we worked as a team, sort of thing. And everybody had a job, everybody had a role. And I think once you figure out what your role is, then you become successful and then you move like a team. So you know, I'm sure you guys will get a chance to work in individual groups, and you know, hopefully you guys will work in a way that you succeed and be efficient as a team. You know, I'm definitely a person who thinks team first. A lot of people think that I wear this chain because of my individual basketball skills. And why you don't have a spray paint can, James, as opposed to having a basketball player. That team concept. You know what I'm thinking about? You know, a team. How are we going to do this as a team? You know, and eventually we would, you know, accomplish our goals. Tomorrow, if you get a chance, if you can, use your DVR. I'm going to be on television, Fox Live, and this show is going to be about 40 years of hip hop. And so I'll be there with Ralph McDaniels, who's a legendary music icon here in New York City. You might know about Ralph McDaniels, right? Okay, he had the first hip hop show and show video called the Video Music Box. Anybody?
Oh yeah.
You remember it? You don't? Oh, guy's huge in New York City.
I was in Kentucky at the time.
Okay, wow. Woo. I'm glad I was in that little town up there, huh? Which snowed every day. But, and, you know, so you can get a chance to check me out. Let me see, then I'm working with a lot of non-profit organizations right now with kids that have already been in the system. I'm working with a group called Simba, who mission is to work with homeless teenagers, so I'll be mentoring them on Saturdays. Tomorrow, after I do the TV thing, I'll be going to an organization called Centers, Community Center Alternatives, and these kids are already in the system, being mandated there by a judge, and my job is to, or my proposed job is to give them art skills. So I look forward to working with all kind of community groups, especially with teenagers, and you know, just try to give them something I didn't have, and you know. And I hope to see you guys at the Graffiti Hall of Fame. It'll be in late April, the Saturday and the Sunday in late April, the last one. And like I said, to get on the guest list, all you have to do is email me at graffitinyctv@gmail.com. There's no more questions. Cameraman, we good.